Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. We've got another outside perspective episode this week. Unfortunately, we did not have one last week. Actually, friend of the one that we've got on this week, myself and our guest this week, Ian Hansen. Adam Boykin was going to be our guest for the New England Patriots week. However, he's in the process of getting married here in the next, I think, month or so. So he was he had a little bit more stuff to be attending to this last week. But thankfully, we have on Ian Hansen, who is already married. He is most recently one of my friends that has just gotten married. So, Ian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and get out of the way early. Tell me why you're a Minnesota Vikings fan.
What's going on, guys? How's everybody doing? I'm Ian. Thank you for having me, Zane. This is an incredible opportunity to really speak about the Minnesota Vikings and the strength of this team. I'm born and raised a Vikings fan. My dad has always said that this is our team. We're gonna live by it, even though all we know is pain and sorrow. It's okay. We'll get there eventually. There's going to be one in my lifetime. Who knows when, but it's going to happen. So, this is where we're at. I got to live by my dad's standards, and here we are, crying one day at a time. And we'll see. This might be the year. Who knows? It's not looking great for any team right now. So, might be Minnesota's year.
You never know. Now, you live in upstate New York, and you talked about how your dad's the inspiration for your fandom. How did he become a Vikings fan? Is that something that has a story to it, or what?
Yeah, so growing up, his dad was obviously around where I'm at, it's all Giants fans. We got a couple of Jets fans, but no one really likes the Jets, so Giants it is. So everyone around here is Giants. My dad's like, yeah, Giants are cool, but I like the colors of the Vikings. Nothing's like it, purple and yellow. It's beautiful colors. Why not go for Vikings? No one's a Vikings fan around here, so it's very rare. He wanted to be a little different, and here we are, about 150 years later.
Well, that's a cool story. You hear different reasons as to why people like different teams. And, again, I've always kind of thought in the back of my mind, you living in upstate New York does not really track as to why you would like a team from Minnesota. But, that's a cool little story. And we appreciate your fandom and you coming on to talk about the Vikings this week because, the Steelers, we're in a spot right now where I don't really know if we have much of an identity. And I think the Vikings are in a similar spot to where you've got J.J. McCarthy, and he was kind of highly touted entering this year, but now he's hurt. And even before he got hurt, you really were wondering, is this the solution to the Vikings right now? They had a great year last year. I think 14-3 was their record. But now you've got Carson Wentz at the helm. What does that kind of profile the Vikings for this specific week against the Steelers? Did you like what you saw last week? Was it more so a defensive game, or what did you see out of Carson Wentz that you liked or didn't like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely in a little gray area for the team right now. Definitely a transition period for sure. But I think what we really need to credit the last week's absolute blow up of the Bengals to is our coaching. I think it's obviously very evident that Kevin O'Connell can make anybody a top QB in the league. I mean, he's turned Sam Darnold. He did Josh Dobbs. He made Kirk Cousins way better than he was, and now he let JJ throw one game. The first game obviously wasn't really great. 3 quarters and nothing, and then one really productive quarter. Really, one productive quarter of JJ's entire career so far. And now Carson Wentz is looking so different than he has ever. And honestly, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with where we're at. There's always going to be improvement. I think we really let the run game go, which is great. But really having Carson Wentz, a 32-year-old veteran back there, just calling the shots. I think we really used to see Carson as a quick throw, a good arm, but not one that was patient or very high IQ, I guess is a good term to say it. But I think O'Connell's really shown him patience and trusting that O-line, and it really showed last game, I thought.
Well, it's interesting. I saw even just a couple of minutes before we started recording that the the Vikings are kind of using Wentz as a point guard in a way. He's not necessarily the main scorer, but he's kind of the guy that's just dishing it out and just kind of leading the offense systematically. I mean, last week your running attack was the main reason why you succeeded offensively. You know, even in the absence of Aaron Jones, you've got Jordan Mason who seems to be stepping in well. And I think a lot of people liked him and that kind of dual tandem that the Vikings set up this season. But, you know, it's interesting because it seems like the game plan for Carson Wentz is, you know, let's not lose the game. Like, let's just go out and see what happens and kind of let the defense take over on the other side of the ball, which they most definitely did last week against Cincinnati. Does it kind of track?
Yeah, 100%. I think the clip you're talking about is Kevin O'Connell's speech on one of those talk shows where he's just letting Carson just take hold, but again, not be that main person to throw the 70-yard bomb to Justin Jefferson or need to produce a ton, just enough to get us by. And I think, especially with Christian Darrisaw back, he's able to do that with a lot more patience in our O line, and being able to trust that a little bit more, which has been obviously very, very good for us.
Yeah, I think so. Now, interestingly enough, you guys are going to get Jordan Addison back this week. Do you see that taking a big effect into the offense, or do you think it's going to be similar based on, again, just kind of the game plan with Carson Wentz behind center?
Yeah, I definitely think Jordan Addison has some maturing to do. And I think this is his year to do it. I don't know if you've looked at his contract recently, but his contract is done after this season. It's either probably going to be us re-signing Hawkinson or Addison. And I see a lot of the analysts saying it's going to be Jordan Addison. He's going to have a crazy year because he's upset about the mistakes he's made and wanting to come back to get that money, which could be significant seeing the market of these other second string receivers that could be a top string receiver on most teams. So it's gonna be weird. I think it's gonna be weird for him because he's always just had sporadic QBs thrown to him ever since he's been in the league with Kirk's injury and then the three QBs we had after that and then Sam Darnold last year and now we have JJ throwing and then JJ's injury and now we have Wentz. So it's just been a whirlpool for him. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to go.
Now, do you think that the defense is it playing better than last year? Because I know a lot last year they were using a lot of blitzing. I don't know exactly if they've been doing the same type of defensive structure as this year than last year. You know, what can the Steelers expect as far as pressure goes this week from, you know, specifically your defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much of the Vikings Bengals you watched last week, but they absolutely destroyed on defense. They had numerous rushes to the QB, and it was just dominant. Our defensive coordinator, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. That's crazy. Um, really shouting out my team right here. Um, but he has just been doing such an incredible job of creating chaos, doing random things, not random, but not standard and not consistent. So he's really breaking up the normal and really trying to create confusion, which we saw last week with the Bengals having to put in a new QB with Joe Burrow out and not knowing what was coming at them because um, they always have created that chaos and has been really beneficial for them in the past.
Yeah, interestingly, so I think, and I just did do a double take and checked on this. It is Brian Flores, your defensive coordinator, which interestingly enough, he was the Steelers defensive coordinator for, I believe, just one season. And David and I were talking about this, I think last week, about like defensive coordinators that the Steelers have had in the past. And we said there was one guy in between a couple of our big defensive coordinators, and we couldn't figure out who that was. And then after the fact, I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's Brian Flores. And it was because I was watching at least a clip or something about the Vikings. And I was like, Man, I wish the Steelers still had Brian Flores because it does seem like that his defensive structure is based around the chaos, like you were kind of talking about. That they bring a lot of pressure, that they give a lot of different looks, and they're kind of bringing out the best from their defensive players. And we saw two defensive touchdowns last week for the Vikings. You know, the pick six and then the scoop and score, both by the same guy. You know, it's interesting because I feel like there's not a lot of like big names necessarily on the Vikings defense, but I think the scheme is kind of what creates all the success, that they work as a unit. And, from there, that's where they have a lot of their success is the gel of the Vikings defense, which is good because I think the Steelers specifically, we have a lot of star power on our defense, but I don't know if it's really gelling right now. And it's interesting because, we gave up 30 points in each of the first 2 weeks, one to the Jets, who have looked awful since then, and then to the Seahawks, which, you don't really know exactly what you're going to get out of them in the course of a full season, but they seem to be okay. Now, at the same time, do you see this game being a offensive performance primarily or a defensive slugfest? Because I think we can see both respectively out of these two teams on any given week.
I definitely think that this is going to be more of a defensive game than an offensive game for these teams. Um, with you guys having Aaron Rodgers and DK, where I'm shocked, but I feel like DK is not performing to the level that we would have expected him to, especially with Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. I think last week he only got like 35 yards and a touchdown. I think we, as in Brian Flores, will have that chaos continuing and really giving Aaron Rodgers a run for his money, especially now that Rodgers is so, I don't know, I don't want to say fragile, but fragile. Um, and with his age kind of expiring a little bit, I'm really curious to see how Brian Flores is going to take that and use it to our advantage because like we saw last week, we are going to be continuing to pound the line on both ends. And I'm not sure what your O line looks like, but I know that Brian Flores likes to have our cornerbacks, some other backs, and tackles and stuff just continuously moving. Obviously not on the line, but just moving to create that chaos as Rodgers is looking around for his play calls and really just creating uncertainty for what's coming ahead. It's gonna be a crazy game. I'm definitely nervous, I will say. I think all of these predictions have the Vikings and the Steelers neck and neck, just in standings. I think they're both two really good teams on both ends, and it's going to come down to the coaches dueling it out.
Well, it's interesting because David, all the time, he talks about Kevin O'Connell and how much he loves Kevin O'Connell for a similar reason to you, in that it seems like he can make anybody a good player. And we have had the fair share of discourse about how Mike Tomlin does not seem like he puts his players in a position to win more often than not. So, if it does come down to coaching from our perspective, I think this has to be advantage Vikings, if that makes sense. Now, as far as the actual play on the field, this is the question that we have to ask you because, when we bring on these guests, we have to say, okay, you have to make a concerted decision as to what you think is going to happen in this game. So give me your score prediction, who wins the game, and then, give me a big play, a big player or something like that to go along with that.
I think we're going to see a lot of production of Jordan Addison. First game back, I think he's going to be really excited to get the ball. And since we haven't seen him this year, I don't know if the Steelers are going to be able to see what he can actually do. And I think he's an incredible player. So I think we're getting at least 75 yards and a touchdown from Jordan Addison. And I want to say Isaiah Rodgers is the man you were speaking of earlier with the two scoring defensive touchdowns last week. I think we're going to see another big play out of him. He's been a big name, a small name that's big, making big plays for our team. So I think we're going to see at least one big play from a defensive side, whether that's another pick six or a fumble or however you might want to call it. I think it's going to be close though. I'm going to go 24-21 Vikings. I think it's going to come down to a Will Reichard 60-yard field goal to win the game.
Okay, I gotcha. Now, this is interesting because this game is going to be played, 9:30 Eastern time in Ireland. This is kind of uncharted territory for me because I can't remember the last time the Steelers played overseas necessarily. I think it's been a long time, and it might have even actually been against the Vikings. But what are your opinions on these foreign games? Because this is definitely a week that discourse is going to, I'm sure, pick up a good bit.
Yeah, I'm biased because I think that this is most definitely in the Vikings' favor, just location, because I don't I don't know about most teams, but I think Pittsburgh is one of the top 5 cities I don't want to play in as an away team. I think that their fans are just as good as fans could get. I think it's definitely much harder for them. But taking your team overseas, yeah, we're technically the away team, but we're both the away team. I think it's going to be a lot of scattered fans. I think I don't know. I think we might have um, a couple of Irish fans because Kevin O'Connell and Carson Wentz has that orange hair, so maybe that'll give us a leg. But you never know. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out because we actually I don't know if you've looked at the Viking schedule, but we also have a back-to-back overseas game. Next week we have a game in London, so that'll be interesting for us because we get to just stay in Europe all week, whereas this week, I think we're both just flying right out, playing the game, and you're flying back. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, especially 2 weeks for the Vikings, just 1 week for Pittsburgh. But I don't know. I'm really excited to see what it's going to look like because who knows? Who knows what the fans are going to do? I think it's going to be scattered. We're going to see a lot of random jerseys, just a lot of big name jerseys that we're going to see. Probably some Tom Brady jerseys. Who knows?
Yeah.
It may be a fun game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't even put that together, the fact that you guys are staying in Europe, because I'm looking at it now. You guys are playing the Browns, in week 5, and we have a bye week in week 5. So we're coming back, we don't have really anything to do after that, but that is super interesting. I don't know, like, I wonder if there's ever been a time where, a team has played multiple games, you know, back to back in foreign countries. Much less like having just 2 games in a foreign country in the same season. I don't know if that's ever happened before.
I think it's really going to affect the Vikings because they're going to be in complete unknown territory. Like think about training and think about just the facilities that they're going to have to occupy for a whole week. It's going to be foreign to them, and they're going to be eating different food, doing different things, different atmosphere, different environment. Temperature is going to be different. All these different things that are really going to, I think, affect not necessarily this game coming up, but definitely the following week. And it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that is super interesting. I didn't even get that perspective in my little research before this, but that's why we bring you on, Ian. You're the expert on this type of stuff, and we appreciate the perspective that you have afforded us Steelers fans upcoming for this Vikings Steelers game. Do you have any final thoughts you want to get out of the way? Any little nuggets we should know about as Steelers fans before this week?
I would say be scared of our kicker. I think he just kicked the longest Vikings field goal in history, 62 yards last week, and he looks just like a college frat boy. He kind of looks like Jonah Hill from his old acting days, and the dude has a boot. So I would say definitely watch out for that. If we're gonna kick anything long, odds are very high it's going in. So I know the Vikings have some bad. I have nightmares about Blair Walsh against the Seahawks kicking a 20-footer or 20-yarder and just absolutely far left, just brutal. So I have high hopes for this guy. I really hope that it can pull us through this year.
All right, that sounds great. Well, as always, Boardman Black and Gold is sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 910-777-3871 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. And I want to give a quick shout out to Ian because the very first episode in, I don't even know what you call it, our discography, that's not the word for it, but if you scroll all the way down to our very first episode, Ian was the one that produced that episode. Do you remember that? Do you remember doing that?
Dude, I do. That was so much fun. That was a good time.
you had to listen to us, you had to listen to us in-house, and then you had to listen to us after the fact to do all the audio doctoring and all that stuff, which you did a heck of a job. I go back and listen to that episode often. And, Ian was the one that did that for us. He's an excellent audio engineer. He's been doing this for a while, and, he's a heck of a friend, and we're glad to, be able to connect again. I haven't seen your face in a while, I'll be honest. This is just over FaceTime, and while you listeners, you can't see his face necessarily, it's a handsome guy over there. The greatest mustache you'll ever see. We'll have a picture of him on the Instagram, which you can follow at Boardman and Gold. And as far as this goes, look at that. What are you doing? I wish everybody could see this. You just did something on FaceTime. There was like some fireworks or something. Oh, he's still doing it. This is crazy. I didn't even know you could do that. That's crazy.
I just did. So for the viewers, I did 2 thumbs up at the screen, and all these fireworks went crazy in the background.
There you go.
That's pretty awesome.
So just throw some thumbs up and you get some fireworks entourage. I guess that's the case. Well, Ian, thanks as always for joining us on this episode of Outside Perspective. David and I will be recording our episode here very shortly, recapping the Patriots week last week and getting a look ahead to this Vikings-Steelers game in Ireland here on this beautiful upcoming Sunday. As for me, I'm Zane Bloom, joined by Ian Hansen. We will see you next time on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast.